Chapter 2. A child's earliest memories derive from pain, pleasure, and bewilderment. By Kilroy J. Oldster. Childhood memories. From innocence to adolescence. We Datars have been the inhabitants of Konkan region in Maharashtra for several generations. I don't have any other details beyond that regarding my forefathers. I know absolutely nothing about their names, the village where they once lived, and the reason behind their migration to elsewhere. People usually take great pride in their religion, caste, family name, or native place. But for me, these things were of no use. Our family has had a long history of migration. Poverty and dire need for employment compelled every generation of our clan to venture to new destinations, and thus we never settled in any permanent place. By the way, living in a fixed place for many generations does not necessarily make a family prosperous. The holy Upanishads say the same thing. Aste bhag asinasya urdvastisthati tishitaha shete nipdyamanasya charati charato bhagaha. When a person sits idle, his destiny also sits immobile. When one stands on his feet, his destiny stands with him, and when one keeps on walking, his destiny also walks alongside him. In our case, the destiny made us wander everywhere all the time. From our first forefather who left his village for progress up to me, this gypsy tradition has been continued. That was, to an extent, very helpful. But an amusing part of it is when I'm asked, who am I really and from where? My mind gets puzzled and I find myself unable to describe my identity in a single word. I am from everywhere. Since my forefathers were originally from Konkan, I am a Kokanastha, resident of Konkan. But since I was born and brought up in Vidarbha and all my relatives are from western Maharashtra, I am a Vaidharbi as well as a Deshastha. At present, I represent both countries, India and UAE, and as my business is expanding across the nations, I am heading towards becoming a global citizen. Hence, the real answer, which satisfies, is I am just a human being representing Mother Earth. I remember a famous quote by Socrates, a great philosopher. I am a citizen not of Athens or Greece, but of the world. From sojourn to settlement. I am able to remember the history of my family only from the time of my grandfather, Ajoba, Mr. Dhananjay Datar. He was a clerk in the railway department. Those were the days of British rule in India. My grandfather was a sincere, honest, and obedient employee. His job consisted of frequent transfers from one station to another, and that too with immediate effect. Thus, Dattatreya Ajoba naturally lived a life of traveling. He was always prepared with his family and baggage to join the duty at any new place mentioned in the transfer order. By the way, until retirement, he felt no need to search for a house at new postings. Everywhere he was transferred, he always got a tenement in the premises of the railway station. This was the reason that he never cared to purchase a property in the form of a house or a piece of land anywhere from his family. Dattatreya Ajoba, with his obedient and disciplined nature, got regular promotions throughout his service tenure and was finally elevated to the post of station master, well before his retirement. His last posting was at Ladkaranja in Washim district of Maharashtra, a holy place in Vidarbha. This town is the birthplace of Guru Nrsimha Saraswati, one of the most revered yogis and also the second avatar of Lord Dattatreya. Besides, since a long period of time, it is among some of the important marketplaces of Vidarbha. Dattatre Ajoba got attracted to the serenity of Ladkaranja and decided to settle there for two reasons. First, his name Dattatre, resembling that of Lord Dattatre, awakened a powerful instinct of devotion in his mind, and the second reason, being more rational, was he had no further chance of travelling to any further place and getting an accommodation facility either. Thus, he became a resident of Ladkaranja and purchased a small house there. Many centuries after wandering, our Datar clan finally got a new permanent address. Dattatre Ajoba was an upright and scrupulous person. Unlike today, those were not the days of exuberant salaries. Ajoba had to manage the family's expenses from his scanty income. He was taciturn by nature and preferred remaining silent even at home. On the contrary, my grandmother Lakshmi Aji was a domineering, surly, and belligerent woman, always ready to take up a verbal fight. Besides, she was accompanied by an equally rebellious army of her 8 daughters. This team of women was so dominant that Ajoba never dared to incite a conflict with them. Our family always remained in penury, as Ajoba's salary was only sufficient to make both ends meet, and whatever he had saved was used up in educational, health, and wedding expenses. I have faint memories of Dattatre Ajoba. He would sometimes tell me wonderful stories. Lakshmi Aji was not affectionate like him. Rather, she was dogmatic and prone to quick anger. Whether endearment or hatred, she was prone to extreme emotions. I had heard one such anecdote from one of my aunts. My father Mahadev was born as the first son in the family. Aji was so happy to have a son after 8 daughters that it was no surprise my father became the apple of her eye. So extreme was her care that she never allowed the child to be put on the floor. Every time one of the sisters had to carry their brother. But I was not lucky enough to enjoy such affection from Aji. Although I was the first grandson in the family, Aji never showed any affection towards me. She had some grudge and dislike for my mother, and as a reason, I had to bear the brunt of Aji's resentment for a long time. Aji always kept me at a distance and never caressed me. Such was her hatred. I grew accustomed to her behavior and reciprocated in the same way. Later in my teenage years, Aji's behavior somewhat changed. She mellowed and started talking to me cordially. Sometimes she would give me a rupee to buy some sweets. Alas, it was too late. The tender age of coaxing grandparents for treats was forever gone. Compared to paternal grandparents, my maternal grandparents were better to me. Of course, they were also strict, but at least sympathetic. My mother's father, Damodar Vaman Rao Kuralkar, was working as a compounder in a government hospital. This Kuralkar family originally hailed from Shegaon, district Buldhana. What a coincidence! Both of my grandparents' families were from famous religious centers of Vidarbha. Ladkaranja is famous as the birthplace of Guru Nrsimha Saraswati, and Shegaon is famous as the holy land of Saint Gajanan Maharaj. I am proud to have my roots from there. Since Kuralkar Ajoba was also a government employee, regular transfers were a part and parcel of his life. His last transfer was to a small village named Shirkhed, district Amravati. He got a home in the staff quarters there. I spent the first 3 years of my primary education in that very house. At post Shirkhed, the Kuralkar family was even poorer than the Datar family. Damodar Ajoba and his wife Shantabai had 3 daughters. My mother Shashikala was the youngest among them. Both of my aunts were married into middle-class families. At the time of my parents' wedding, Baba was working as a sergeant in Indian Air Force. They had their first child on 16th September 1964 and christened him as Dhananjay. That was me. After a year, my younger brother Sanjay was born. Baba, being Air Force personnel, was routinely transferred to different air bases. He was posted at Patiala in Punjab when I was 2.5 years old. I completed my nursery and KG standards there. Suddenly, Baba was transferred to Kolaba in Mumbai and we followed him. But just then, my parents encountered a problem. I couldn't get admission for first standard in any nearby local school. Sanjay, my younger brother, was an infant then, and naturally, I had to pay more attention towards him. The nature of Baba's job was so hectic that he would leave home early in the morning and return late at night. That made him unable to help I in any way. I couldn't handle 2 toddlers at a time. Another difficulty was that with marginal salary, he couldn't afford to get me admitted in expensive English medium schools. At last, I took the decision with a heavy heart to send me to Shirkhed for my primary education. Her parents were agreeable about accepting my responsibility. Thus, I arrived in Shirkhed all alone at a tender age. Shirkhed, being a small village in Morshi Tehsil of Amravati district, didn't have any English medium school. Therefore, I had to take admission in the local Zilla Parishad school for first standard. Damodar Rajuba's outfit was typically consisting of a dhoti, shirt and black cap. He never tried on a coat in his lifetime. Shanta Aji would wear a 9-yard sari. I still remember her face accentuated with a large red sindoor on her forehead. Ajuba and Aji were both of a strict discipline. Ajuba was very particular about making me recite the number tables and Ram Raksha Stotra every day. But like Datar Ajuba, he also would fear his wife. Interestingly, this couple's names were contradictory to their behavior. The name Damodar means the god of wealth, but Ajuba, in fact, lived always in a run-down condition. The same thing was with Aji. Her name Shantabai implies a woman of peaceful nature, but actually she was not a calm personality. Poverty made her behavior grouchy and quick-tempered. Ajuba never beat me, but Aji was not that tolerant. I received her smacks frequently for various reasons. Aji was very neat and particular about cleanliness, and I, being a naughty child, was not accustomed to tidiness. I would often spill something on the floor, and then hard slaps from irritated Aji were for sure. To avoid the beating, I would use many ideas. One of them was to make a deal with her. I would obey her if she agreed not to beat me. She had no choice but to accept the condition. In fact, behind her strict discipline, a deep love for her grandson was always there. Ajuba's home was a single-story structure with 3 rooms and a tiled roof over it. There were no water lines or taps. We had to fetch the water from a nearby well. That is why Aji would not tolerate the wastage of water. There was a spacious yard in front of our home. I would play many games there with my friends. Ajuba couldn't afford to buy expensive cricket accessories, but we had a solution for it. We would collect the strips of waste cloth from garbage thrown on the street, make a ball out of them, and then cover and secure this with used rubber tubes of bicycle tires. Someone had a makeshift bat made of a plank of wood. We would form the teams and play day-long matches. Besides, other local games like Dabba, I Spice, Sur Parambhya, Lagori, Hide and Seek, Thief and Police Kabaddi were also there to add to the pleasure. Ajoba would walk everywhere on foot as he couldn't afford to buy a bicycle. Poverty made his lifestyle frugal. He would always wear cheap slippers soled with hard tire rubber. This footwear was robust and durable, but initially would wound the foot and make them swell. I didn't have any footwear. I would go to school barefoot like every other kid. In the backyard of our home, there were lots of trees, but they were a shelter for snakes too. That is why Aji never allowed us to play there. Even when we played in the front yard, she would watch us carefully standing on the doorstep. Sometimes, when I was late returning from school, Aji would impatiently wait for my arrival. Dilapidated and discarded mansions are often passed off as haunted houses in villages to keep the children away from playing there. In Shirkhed also there was one such haunted bungalow. The villagers seldom dared to pass near that place in the evening. I remember, when I was in second standard, I once went to the house of my classmate Sanjay Marudkar after school hours. He was the son of our headmaster. While playing at his home, we spontaneously hatched a plan to go to the outskirts of the village. We were involved so deeply in chatting that we didn't realize where we were heading. When it was late evening and I still hadn't returned home, Aji became tense. She asked my friends, and one of them, Ashok, told her that Dhananjay has gone to the haunted house. She was so scared that she sent my friends to bring me back. As soon as I stepped inside my home, the first thing she did was to thrash me and then scold me. In those few moments, I was so enraged at her. Years later, when I became a parent and my son was once lost in the crowd, I experienced the same panic and anxiety. Only then did I realize the feelings of my Aji. Limited meals. I am really grateful to my maternal grandparents, as they taught me the importance of frugality in my early childhood. I learned to live a self-reliant life with self-esteem. Sometimes my mother would offer her parents some money for my expenditure, but they always declined. The everyday meal in Ajoba's home was limited to two things. The lunch contained roti and dal, whereas the dinner contained roti and curd. Vegetables were usually prepared only when they were available at cheap rates. Interestingly, rice was also not a part of our daily menu. It was prepared on the occasion of festivals. Milk and butter were luxury items for us. I would get bored at having to eat the same monotonous menu every day. I would demand some sugar to be added to the sour curd, but Aji firmly denied it, saying that sugar was reserved for tea only, and I should eat the curd imagining it to be mixed with sugar. Not quite convinced, I would continue my insistence. Of course, I was not mature enough then to understand the helplessness of my grandparents. All the same, let me admit that although my meals contained a limited menu, I didn't go to sleep hungry even for a single night. Besides, Aji and I always enforced a strict rule on us siblings to abstain from greed and temptation. Thus, I became abstemious and got accustomed to being satisfied with what I had in my plate. So if I ever visited someone's house and they asked me to dine, I'd decline by saying I had just eaten and my stomach